In 1956, MGM quietly removed an 11-minute sequence from Forbidden Planet that was never intended to be seen by the public. The scene featured Frances and her tame tiger, and it carried a symbolic weight tied to innocence, sexuality, and ancient mythology, themes that terrified the censors of the era. For decades, only a tiny circle of insiders even knew it had been filmed. That lost footage actually explained why the tiger suddenly turns on Altera right after her first kiss with Commander Adams. What MGM decided to bury revealed a much darker and more provocative undercurrent running through the entire movie. The story began back in 1952 when two matte painters, Irving Bloch and Alan Adler, guys who had never written a screenplay in their lives, walked into MGM with a story they titled Fatal Planet. At the time, science fiction was treated like the bottom of the barrel: cheap B-movies, recycled monster costumes, and washed-up actors. Nobody took them seriously. But Bloch and Adler didn't think like writers, they thought like artists. They imagined a distant world not just as a setting, but as a haunting, breathtaking painting filled with silence, wonder, and terrifying technology. MGM rejected it at first, but the idea stuck in someone's mind. By 1954, everything had changed. Television was exploding, people were obsessed with space, and the studio suddenly saw potential. That dusty pitch was pulled out of a drawer and transformed into Forbidden Planet, one of the most expensive and ambitious science fiction films ever made at the time. The budget soared between $1.90 and $2 million, insane money when most sci-fi flicks were made for $150,000 to $500,000. MGM wasn't just making another space adventure, they were trying to turn a disrespected genre into high art. They built massive original sets, hired rising stars like Leslie Nielsen and Frances alongside the legendary Walter Pidgeon, and poured every cent into making the film visually unforgettable. It was such a bold move that people inside the industry whispered, "Is this genius or suicide?" The gamble paid off. The movie didn't just earn its money back, it proved that science fiction could be spectacular and prestigious. Originally, the story was set in 1972, but the technology felt too advanced for a date that close, so they pushed it centuries ahead to the 23rd century on a remote planet called Altair 4. At its core, the film is a futuristic retelling of Shakespeare's The Tempest. Dr. Morbius is Prospero, his daughter Altera is Miranda, and the invisible monster is a manifestation of repressed human desires, just like the spirits in the play. By blending high literature with pulp sci-fi, the movie became something unique, not just spaceships and ray guns, but a deep exploration of ego, control, and the terrifying power hidden inside the human mind. Directing duties went to Fred M. Wilcox, a man famous for Lassie Come Home and with zero sci-fi experience. Many were confused by the choice, but MGM wanted someone disciplined who could handle a huge cast and massive sets on schedule. Wilcox treated the material with complete seriousness, no camp, no winks at the audience. He shot it like Shakespeare said among the stars, letting the groundbreaking effects support the human drama instead of stealing the show. Screenwriter Cyril Hume took the original visual concept and layered it with heavy Freudian psychology. The monster wasn't an alien, it was the raw, primitive part of the subconscious given physical form by the ancient Krell technology. The film became a warning about knowledge, pride, and the destructive forces we all carry inside us, hidden behind shiny machines and progress. Walter Pidgeon, then 58, almost turned down the role of Dr. Morbius. Sci-fi wasn't his world. What convinced him was the huge budget and the clear parallels to The Tempest. He saw it wasn't silly, it was a tragedy about hubris. His restrained, dignified performance gave the film its emotional weight. At just 23, and Frances stepped onto the set in costumes that were revolutionary, ultra-short dresses designed by Helen Rose that predated the 1960s miniskirt craze by nearly a decade. Executives panicked. Spain banned the movie until 1967. Conservative theaters threatened to pull it. Bare legs, bare feet, futuristic innocence, Altera became an icon of beauty and rebellion at the same time. Leslie Nielsen, years before his comedy era, played the straight-laced, heroic Commander Adams. basically the prototype for Captain Kirk. Warren Stevens as Doc Ostro delivered the chilling line, "Monsters from the ID," that still gives goosebumps. And of course, Robbie the Robot, voiced by Marvin Miller, operated by stuntmen, stole every scene he was in with his charm and personality. The film premiered not in Hollywood, but at a science fiction convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, on March 3 to 4, 1956, a huge honor for the genre. The official Hollywood opening came later at Grauman's Chinese Theater with full cinemascope and stereo sound. The score wasn't credited as traditional music, it was listed as "electronic tonalities" by Lewis and B.B. Barron because they built custom circuits instead of using instruments. Their revolutionary all-electronic soundtrack broke and rewrote the rules of film music. Now, about that missing 11-minute sequence. Early in the film, Doc Ostro was supposed to remark that only a virgin can safely approach a unicorn, and he saw the same mystical innocence in the way Altera could pet and control a full-grown tiger without fear. The censors found the virginity/unicorn metaphor far too sexually suggestive for 1956, so the entire scene was cut. That's why, in the finished movie, the tiger suddenly attacks Altera after her first kiss with Adams. It seems random unless you know the deleted context. The moment she loses her innocence, she loses her power over the beast, just like in ancient myths. The only place the explanation survived for years was in the 1956 novelization, written by W.J. Stewart, which kept the unicorn line word for word. There was also the famous swimming scene where Altera appears completely nude, except she wasn't. She wore a flesh-colored bodysuit, but the lighting, water ripples, and cinematography by George Falsey made the illusion so perfect that audiences lost their minds. Morality groups raged, theaters pulled the film, and MGM had to publicly insist nothing indecent had been shown. When MGM re-released the movie in 1972 as a children's matinee, they cut over 6 minutes, including most of the swimming scene and flirtatious dialogue, to get a G rating. Spain had already banned it for over a decade because of the short skirts and that nude swim behind the scenes. The production was a technical marvel. A 350-foot hand-painted cyclorama created the endless alien desert. The massive flying saucer set was 167 feet wide. The Krell laboratory used 50,000 feet of wiring and 12,500 feet of neon tubing. Robbie the Robot alone cost $125,000, over $1.2 million today, and became one of the most reused props in TV and film history. The invisible ID monster was hand-animated frame by frame by Disney legend Joshua Metter, a glowing outline that only became visible inside the ship's force field. It terrified censors not because it was gory, but because it represented the darkest parts of the human psyche made real. In the end, Forbidden Planet wasn't just a groundbreaking sci-fi movie. It was a beautiful, haunting, and slightly scandalous piece of art that pushed every boundary, technical, artistic, and moral, and changed what science fiction could be forever.